Thank you so much for being here. My name is Vicki Nauman. I have a long history in Seattle, and so this has been fantastic to be back here and listening to all of these great stories about how music is being supported in local communities. We have a really, really great group here to talk, and what we're going to do is I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves, and then I'll set a little bit of context around the conversation. And you know, let's just kind of go down the line. Okay. Oh. No.
We can use this one. Yeah. Hi, amigos. My name is Alina Cabrera. I work at KEXP. I'm originally from Argentina. I moved to Seattle in 2018. I work at KEXP as a host, one of the hosts of El Sonido, every Monday night, 7 p.m. on KEXP, okay? 3 hours with alternative Latin music. And I also work at KEXP as Latin Partnerships and Editorial Manager. We're going to talk a little bit about why, maybe for you, it's new that KEXP is working with bilingual content. Bueno, I literally grew up with KEXP in Argentina and became a big part of our lives in discovering new music. But this is a little bit about me.
Beautiful. An honor to be here with you and with these amazing folks. My name is Kay Van Petten, and I am a poet and musician, but I also work for an incredible local nonprofit that we have been talking about a lot these last 2 days called Sonic Guild that gives unrestricted grants to artists. We've made some really amazing waves in this city and in Austin as well. And I'm so excited to be on this panel talking about music futures for local artists because I think about it every single day.
All right. My name is Steven Smith Contreras. I am part of the Denver delegation here representing Youth on Record. So I am the director of programs at Youth on Record, been there for 2 years. We work at the intersection of arts, education, community, workforce development, amongst many other things, and really focus on young people ages 12 to 24, as mentioned, from the music education lens all the way to the creative workforce development lens. I'm also a musician, drummer, percussionist, have been playing for many years, toured at one point, spent about 15 years in LA working at the LA Phil and with youth music ed as well. But yeah, excited to be here, and it's been just really rewarding being up here with so many great minds and connecting with so many folks. So.
Hey girl, hey, hi everyone. I'm Mayada. I am a singer-songwriter from Minneapolis, born and raised. Anybody 612 in here? Yes, gang. I really believe that music is medicine and that it is a really powerful force for on a really primal vibrational level, shaking shit loose inside of us, and it's really important for us to do that for ourselves and then do that in collective spaces. So it's a thing that I try to really foster in my live shows, just catharsis and doing that in a collective way. So yeah, that's kind of it. That's why I'm here.
And I'm Vicki Nauman. It's great to be here. I lived here in Seattle in the 90s. I remember the days I worked at KCMU. For any of you oldsters who are here, may remember that. But I really cut my teeth in digital, which is what I do almost exclusively now since 2000. And I know that that is also, looking at the crowd, there's probably some people you were in diapers in 2000 when music was disrupted. And there was a pivotal moment when music became digitally available because instantly the entire market became global. And this was fantastic in the sense that you could distribute your music and get it heard by people all over the world. But it seems like over the past 25 years, as we have been working to try to make the changes in systems work for a global economy, we've kind of forgotten about the importance of the local economies. And you can Yes, in the old days, it was very different. You know, you form a band, you play in a local coffee shop, then maybe you get a better gig. If you're lucky, you got into a studio to make a recording, and then maybe you got signed to an independent label. Now you can do that in your basement. You can collaborate with somebody in another country digitally. You can release everything. But you still need to have support and localization of, you know, the community, the creative community. And that's really what we're here to talk about, is this contrast between the old and the new. You know, we have artists here, we have organizations that are very passionate, and you're trying to funnel everything into digital systems, but we still need the local. And one of the biggest changes when we did a pre-panel on this was the difference between the old and new days. One was around artist empowerment. You know, it used to be all about gatekeepers, and that you could not do anything unless you had somebody to open a door, someone to put you in the studio, someone to make your music available. But now everyone can do anything that they want, and that's kind of a double-edged sword, because it's a myth for artists to be truly DIY and do everything yourself. You can't be an artist and hone your craft and run your social media and run your own label and administer your publishing rights and collect all your money. It's just not possible. So let's start with this, of artist empowerment. How, you know, in one sense, you'd say, well, you can do anything you want. But what are the things that really need to change in order to further empower artists to actually make their careers work, especially in the early days? And I want you guys to just jump in.
This will come as no surprise to anyone in this room, but artists need money.
Say it again.
We have to pay artists, and BIPOC artists to the front, queer and trans artists to the front. We need, as you know, capitalism has bloated the top 1%. It's not trickling down in ways that it used to, and we need to find creative ways to fund musicians. They're already doing it themselves, but we need to get money back in their pockets, and even just teaching individuals how important patronage of music support is. Like historically there's been support for the symphony or the opera, where there are music patrons, there are sponsors. We need that type of support for local music. Mic drop. And I want to give an amazing example of that just because it just happened right behind us. But you might have just seen an incredible local band, Dark Chisme, setting up. They're going to play today. So if you're not already planning on staying till 5, you must stay, because this is music like you need to hear. I'm going to ask you to talk about it too. But they received the Sonic Guild grant last year, so that's $10,000 unrestricted to do with as they please. And I said, how's it going? How are you spending it? And they said, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we have it. We were out of our vinyl and we weren't gonna, do another run because we didn't have money. Got the money, did another run, sold it out immediately. That is money back in their pockets and back in the pockets of other local creatives. That money just recirculates too, right? I asked them what else they did. They said, we made a music video. It's premiering tonight at Baba Yaga. Come to our show. So if you're free tonight at 9, go to Baba Yaga and see them as well, and see the music video that they could not have made, they wouldn't have funding for. So that's another thing we lost since, the 90s and MTV Music Video Countdown is music videos. I love music videos. Where have they gone? Well, if we get pockets back in money back in artists' pockets, we can have more music videos again. Imagine a world where your favorite music video was never made. That's what's happening right now if we can't pay local musicians what they need, with this transfer of power from industries to individuals. And I want to ask you to talk a bit about Dark Chisme and the importance of supporting Latin artists while Latin music is becoming more popular.
Oh my God, yes, thank you so much. What happened with Dark Chisme was historical, and I think that is a great example of when I first came in Seattle in 2018, and the music industry, the local music industry that we can see now. If we think about the old music industry and the new music industry, we don't have to go like decades ago. From 2018 until now, we had a global pandemic in the middle, and also we have a more diverse society. We have like new generations of black and brown kids that now are consuming music and are creating music. And Dark Chisme is a good example. Puertorriqueña, Mexicana from the U.S., based in Seattle. I think that Dark Chisme found her own power on her identity. And that made me think a lot about the old times where Latinos, just to make their way in the U.S., must speak English or must compose in English. And I'm talking about just Latin artists because I'm coming from that community, but you can expand that to all the different communities. So when I had the honor to present the grant to Dark Chisme, that was a victory for all the community there. But at the same time, I don't want to still celebrating just a few moments for our community. And when I'm thinking about artists and how can we improve their lives, yes, it's with money, but also it's educating the new audience, the new people that are consuming shows, the new people that really want to buy a ticket to see a band. If we're still booking bands just in the city, we're not making the music accessible to others. And that is important, specifically now that we can see Seattle for the first time booking like huge Latino artists in the Climate Pledge Arena or advertising in both languages for the first time. That didn't happen a few years ago. I'm working at KXP. What? I mean, each time that I'm thinking about that, I feel so proud, and I feel that it's artists, but also it's the full community around. I don't know, maybe you can speak more from the point of view of artists, but maybe a few years before, the expectation was, I want to be in the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. I want that. How can I get this team, to work with me? And now it's like, you don't need that. I think so. I don't know what you think about it.
No, you're absolutely right. Because I wanted to actually just expand on that. I think a huge part of this right now is like artist education, and then the education of like audiences on the industry that we grew up with doesn't exist anymore. And that means that like the possibilities for artists and then also like the ask for audiences is very different. I am one of these artists that like I had a small viral moment on TikTok that was really, really helpful for me, and it like pushed me to be able to like do my music full time. However, I was completely unprepared for it, and I'm still like living with the repercussions of that because I was like, oh, I grew up in a time where like if I hear the word million related to somebody's song, I'm like, I don't know how much that person made and was able to put back into their music, but I'm assuming that like there's like a kind of commensurate bag there. That is not the bag that exists with like 1 million streams of something. And I learned that the hard way. I didn't have like the education going into that moment. But also I see that in audiences, people being like, oh yeah, so like you're doing really well. You have 1 million streams on this song. And I'm like, girl, that does not mean what you think it means. We need, like, as an artist, if you believe in what I'm doing, I still need you to pull up to these shows. I still need you to buy this merch. It's not enough to just stream the song. But people don't know that because they also grew up with the same expectation that I have. So it's like changing like the conversations around like, what does this mean now? What are we asking for ourselves? And also like, as an artist, you can make a living and be actually fine without ever seeing the cover of a Rolling Stone. There are so many, like the possibilities are so vast, but some of the understanding is like, if you're not a superstar like charting artist, it's either that or it's I'm an amateur in my garage. And it's like there is a universe between those two things, but we need to know what those possibilities are to actually be able to achieve it.
I've got a couple words around that. Yeah, echoing everything that's been said, rising artists, up-and-coming artists need access to information. They need resources. They need support from the community and programs from the community that are at no cost. So when it comes to the different income sources, right, the multiple different ways that you can make money through your music, through your art, and also understanding the back end, the business side of things, right, how to do your taxes, how to navigate all these different ins and outs are so important. The other piece is really the platform piece, right? Like, I feel like a big piece of music has historically been this kind of like pay-to-play piece, right? There's still a scene, a lot of the hip-hop scene in Denver is this pay-to-play connection piece for young artists, which is really troubling. But this connection piece of like, how do I meet this person? How do I actually connect the dots with this person that can open up this opportunity, this platform for me? So what's interesting about something that we're doing in Denver with Youth on Record is that we have a fellowship program. It's an artist development program. It's 11 months. They're actually paid to participate in this. They go through all these different elements around training, around knowing how to, really navigate this. And now, a piece that's really exciting of that is we're also co-owner of the Underground Music Showcase. We just announced the lineup yesterday. We have over 10 artists that came out of our artist development programs through our fellowship that actually got accepted to play the UMS this year. That's a new platform. There's more eyes. There are professional relationships that can be built there. There's a band that came out of our program that actually met their booking agent, their management at the UMS a few years ago. So I think these are all different examples of the information, the tools, and the relationships that artists need to really be able to advance the craft.
So great to hear you all speak, because I think one of the problems that we have in digital, which it just emphasizes the importance of things that are in real life and not in digital, is that all of the business models, Spotify, Apple Music, social media streaming, all of these models are built around scale, and they're built around volume of streams. So if you are an artist that gets on a playlist and your music is streamed hundreds of millions of times, you're doing great. Fantastic, you make a lot of money. If you are an artist that makes, that has 1,000 streams, I mean, now that's worth about $3. And then now, because of the changes in some of the streaming rules, that is completely demonetized. So you get nothing for 1,000 streams. So if you're a young artist, a lot of people, when this change was made earlier this year, a lot of people said, well, who cares? $1,000 or 1,000 streams and $3, that's nothing. But if you think about it, you take a step back and you think about the math. You're a young artist, you're starting out. Those are people that listen to you. And if you have 10 songs and they all all have about 1,000 streams and you don't get any money from that, that is a significant blow. And in aggregate, there's been over $60 million in value that has transferred from artists who may have under 1,000 streams to other artists who are making a lot more money. So we have these inherent disparities, despite the fact that this entire technical landscape and digital landscape has been built around democratization and letting everybody get out. But it isn't. The playing field is not even. And, it's never been easy to be an artist. A lot of people fantasize and romanticize, we used to sell CDs out of our trunk. That was not a great business model, And so, it feels like we need two things. We need to modernize the digital landscape and try to create opportunities that are going to be better for middle-class artists and emerging artists. But we also really need to find catalysts in local communities that can help get people to the point that they're great musicians, that they understand how everything works. And you all have such great examples, and I'd love to kind of dive into some of the things that you're working on that are impacting change.
I want to shout out someone really special in this room, and I have a good example tied to that. Jace from the Residency here in Seattle. If you don't know what the Residency is, you're not from around here. They're an incredible nonprofit supporting youth in hip-hop here in Seattle, and Macklemore supports them, but Jace does the heavy, heavy lifting of building community there. And we were just chatting about some success stories he's seen, and there's this local artist, Kenshi Kills, with a bunch of Z's. Look her up. She's amazing. But he was telling me about how, she was kind of new to the music scene. She was quiet and crept up in the Residency, and what inspired inspired her to start making music, or at least to bring it to stages and start being more vocal about it, was the existence of a community that saw her for who she was, and that reflected back to her that she was even able to do this. And now, I just saw her at Treefort, shout out Boise, shout out Treefort, incredible performance, and now she wants to tour, and because of Jace's mentorship, and he was telling me that she kind of gave him a really big shout out, it meant a lot to them. Because of that connection and that relationship, she believed she could do this, and so she did. And now I'm excited to announce, this is not public information yet, so sorry, Ben, if I'm not supposed to say this, but Sonic Guild just launched a new granting line called the Tour Support Grant, which supports artists on tour. They really need that. It's just money per each night they can apply for it, and Kenshi did apply for it because of Jace, because Jace, taught her, there's this organization, Sonic Guild, they're doing this thing. She applied. I'm excited to announce that she got it. So she'll be going on her first tour supported by the Tour Support Grant, and that is the kind of change we can see.
Wow, congrats. And you were talking about how the algorithm works, and I think that we can also hack the system in a way. I don't know if hack is the correct word in English, sorry about that, but I think that's something that KEXP can do, and I feel very proud of working at KEXP, is how KEXP build that trust with their community and just putting some humanity there. You know that behind KEXP is people making music and trying to build stories through telling stories through music. And I think that, we have the Live on KEXP sessions, and it's really important, the radio station in our local community here in Seattle, in the Bay Area now. But what happened with the Live on KEXP sessions was incredible. I mean, it's how I'm here, basically, because the idea of the local scenes can resonate around the world. It's people that want to enjoy music and people that want to see themselves on those organizations, programming, radio shows, and everything. So what I want to say with that is that just putting some humanity there, I think that is still the path. Like curating music and trying to bring, the most exciting thing about my work is that I don't have to see how many people are listening to that artist. I'm just listening artists and including them on my show without thinking about that. I've been in so many meetings and music conferences when they're talking about how to become massive artists, and that is so frustrating. Because there are generation of artists that feels really bad. And if we're talking about mental health in the music industry, it's a completely different chapter, and we can stay here for hours. But artists are really struggling about finding these type of platforms where you can see like humans that are behind. And I think that is super necessary. Mm-hmm.
Jump in there. Yeah, definitely when you start thinking about the algorithm and numbers and Instagram followers and monthly Spotify plays, it can really it gets to my mind sometimes, right? Sometimes I'm just like, forget this whole thing. It's worth nothing. And in all reality, I can go, play a gig on a Friday and make more money in one day than Spotify's ever paid me out, right? But, going back to the question around like, what are some things that we're doing that are exciting, that are helping with artist development and visibility? We have a youth booking system at Youth on Record where we actually, through our training, are paying young artists to go play in the community. So we'll get reached, an organization or a partner will reach out to us that they have X amount of opportunities, and we will place young artists from our roster to go play these gigs. They're all legit paying, standard artist rates and whatnot. We're teaching them how to navigate with sound engineers, which sometimes can be a little bit more challenging. Going out into the community, really getting their chops up, right, and playing out there. I love how Albina's saying hack the system too, because that's an area that we definitely can be a bit more focused on when we're thinking about what does a playlist look like that's being leveraged by Youth on Record or an organization that has a bigger platform that people are going to go to and see, and then plug in our up-and-coming artists, our rising creatives that can then get that visibility that's needed. Also with YouTube, and shout out to David here with Youth on Record, who's actually pushing a lot of our YouTube programming. And yeah, I really think that there's ways to think about this. We can't ignore the numbers in the algorithm, but got to kind of keep it in its place.
Very that, because many a day, all of that has taken me down. I'm like, am I going to do this for the rest of my life? That's crazy. For me, I think one thing that I have benefited from, and I try to like pour back into, especially in Minneapolis, like not necessarily formal programming, but just like relationships with other musicians. Like I have been like informally mentored by so many people. I've made like so many friends by being in bands, by people being in my band. And a thing that has been so instrumental to me is like, okay, I got booked to, or I started off in like an open mic. Someone who had more power than me, like saw me and was like, okay, I like what you're doing. And I'm not a very shy person, but I can be in some cases. I get off the stage, I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. This is like my first showcase. People in that room who had some power, had some experience, were like, hey, I don't know if you know what you're doing, but have you thought about this? Can I help you with this? Like, people just offering help in those ways has been so instrumental to me growing as an artist. I have a mentor who, like, we were on the same bill, and I had been really, really frustrated with the feeling of like getting off of stages and being like, I feel very, very drained. I feel like I was just fighting the crowd the entire time. Like, how do you get people to just like do what you're asking them to do? And she's like, you just tell them, like outline at the beginning of the show, these are my expectations. This is what I need from you. Are you with me? Can y'all do that? Wait for them to tell you. And then check in periodically through the show. It was that simple. It changed the way I performed, like, since then. She's been completely impactful in the way that I actually run a show. I have now gotten to a point where, like, some of my bandmates, people that I've played in bands with for, like, close to 10 years now, are at a point where they want to take their solo careers a little bit more seriously. And moving from a place of, like, I'm just doing this on the weekends to, like, no, I want to make some money from this. I believe enough in this to like commit to it in some ways. And I'm just always here like, okay, let me just tell you, don't be like me. The mailing list is God. I went way too long being like, yeah, it's okay if I have some social media followers. Like, if I get the followers, they'll be able to hear me. Like, I can tell people what I'm doing. I can tell them when I release stuff. Lies, 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 lies. The mailing list is still God. I'm always telling people, like, do you even have just like a contact form? I don't care if you have a website. Do you have a way to even just capture people's emails and hopefully like cell phone numbers, potentially location at your shows? Do you have that? I'm going to be on your ass until you have it. Like, just the understanding of like, if you have any kind of experience and you care about the like furtherance of music, and especially in your local scene, you see somebody and you're like, I don't know if you know what you need to know, but I know a thing. Do you know the thing that you need to know? A lot of the time they don't. And that can be so instrumental in like helping them avoid the pitfalls that you fell into.
I think, preach. One of the things that I've been listening to all of you is, you know, everyone's kind of like shades of gray of different problems, different solutions, and I think this music industry is extremely difficult to navigate, and that is by design. It is by design to be almost unintelligible, to know master publishing, performing rights, how do the algorithms work, which distributors should you use, who's a trusted venue in your local community. And there's a story that I want to tell about aligning interests and the power of this. In 2018, the Music Modernization Act passed in Washington, D.C. This was the first change in copyright laws in this country for a long time. And for probably at least 10 years before that, everyone was going to Capitol Hill and talking about the problems of the music industry. The artists had one story, songwriters had another story, PROs had one story, the publishers had a different story, and labels had a different story, plus all of the services like Pandora and the streaming services. Everyone was complaining to legislators. They took meetings for years, and they came back after all of this, and they said, look, the artists are saying they're not making money, but Pandora is saying that they're spending all their money on royalties that are going to the labels and the publishers and the PROs, but the artists aren't making any money and the songwriters don't make any money. So you people need to all go away and stop coming to us with your problems. We need you to unite, and you need to organize and come to us with something that you want us to do. How can we help you? We can't help you if you are not able to articulate a common solution. And this is so true at local levels and with artists and independent artists, because many artists feel like they're, battling it out every day. They don't understand things. They don't know, how can I make money? How can I get the right partners in the industry? And I think this is, this does boil down to human relationships and people in local communities. And I'd like to hear a little bit more from all of you around what you have seen around aligning interests. And it could be things like what you were talking about, just sharing information between artists and saying, no, that doesn't work. You need to do this. But this feels to me like a really critical catalyst for local communities of getting people aligned around what their common interests are so that the local leaders can help.
I'm just gonna start real quick because I don't even know I don't necessarily have answers to that question, but what I will say is the thing that has had me blown about being here in this entire experience, I feel like my jaw has just been dropped the entire time that I've been here because for whatever reason, my conversations are with artists, with bandmates, producers, maybe somebody trying to book me for an event, whatever, but it didn't occur to me at all that there's a policy infrastructure around if me and my artist friend are why are we both struggling in this way? There are policy reasons for that. And I think this has just been so eye-opening. I'm there are so many possibilities for solutions that I have not even considered, that I haven't even, people that I could go to partner with, that it never occurred to me to look into because I was laser focused on my own version of the problem and the version of the problem that people like me have. And the thought of something like this where it's there are people who are on sides of this that maybe are vaguely aware of each other but are not talking to each other, just creating places on local levels like this where people can just be hey, do you realize we're aligned in this way? Yeah, we're kind of adversarial in this way, but we could maybe solve that problem by talking to each other, on a local level so people actually understand, who are the players around me? This format is so freaking powerful. So powerful.
Well, and this is exactly what happened when everyone in the industry got sent away from Capitol Hill. And what we started doing over about a 2 or 3 year period is first we had super secret meetings and we could not, it was like Fight Club, we couldn't talk about it because of antitrust. But we were putting all the different stakeholders in private rooms and we started talking about the problems and we started figuring out, okay, wait, this is a problem, data's a problem for you and you and you. Okay, so we started identifying common problems. And then that led to official roundtables that were held all over the country where those same stakeholders could then speak with legislators about what those problems were. And it took a safe space for people to share what the main pressing issues were and then coalesce that.
Mm-hmm. I also feel that the solution is not just only financial support. It's essential, don't get me wrong. But I think that building trust and building people in the right positions to decentralize the music industry, I think. you can have the budget that you need to run a specific project, but if we see the same people on the same positions of power, that has an expiration date. So I think that we are facing really hard times politically in this country and globally. And I think that the important part is to still educating our communities that we have places like this one. In my case, places like KEXP that is supported by the community.
Can you expand on what you mean by decentralized? What do you can you talk through that a little?
Yeah, of course. I think that when I started this panel, we were talking about, hey, what if instead of just booking the same bands on the same venues, we can start thinking about the region in a different way, trying to bring accessibility, trying to speak to different parts of the music industry, and also to start reaching out different communities that right now are running this country as well. So I think that accessibility is a good solution, but also, building more than just financial support. I think that is important. I don't know what you all think.
Go ahead.
I can dive in. So I think that, we all know the power of music and art, right? And what it does and its impact on community. When I think about the youth development lens and this like post-COVID world that we have all been navigating, mental health and wellness is a huge challenge with our young people, right? And so what we've really looked at and tried to use and leverage is using music and community and third spaces as an opportunity to build opportunities for youth and to find spaces where they can actually be interface and work with young people or work with mentors that can support with mental health, that can support with wellness. We've had many conversations over the last couple of days. I know that many of our cities are still struggling with like vacant downtowns and spaces that maybe have had a spike in crime, right? And if we look at what music and bringing community together can do in those spaces, I think there's a lot of opportunities there. But it really comes back to how do we channel the funding, how do we channel the supports, how do we also have the right mentors and right people in place to support these different needs.
I think also to even know what problems you're trying to solve in order to have, like, you're talking about an example where people didn't even understand the problem and they had to talk before it was even real. And right before this, we were talking about how you have to be delusional to make music work, to make it work in this industry. And so many musicians are. And I mean that you have to have this collective shared vision that something better is possible. And in order to do that, you have to have hope and you have to talk about it and have really hard conversations. And we in Seattle are so lucky to have who you heard from earlier, Kate and Shannon and Scott, who are constantly asking, what are the problems? What do we need to solve? What's going on? Or people like Ben, the executive director of Sonic Guild, who's always asking musicians, what's going on? What do you need? And sometimes people are taken aback because maybe they've never been asked before what they need, so they don't even know the answer. And that's the first step to getting a community to solve that problem, is asking them it. And I think Seattle is an incredible city for doing that. I mean, we have really, really amazing local government leadership and just community stakeholders where if there's a problem, it gets solved. There's no healthcare for musicians. Smash pops up. Not enough of our venues are all ages, or kids aren't getting the music education they need. The Vera Project pops up. There's not enough global music coming to our festivals. Freak Out pops up. We haven't talked about Freak Out yet, which I'm also on the board for, an incredible community. They're recently a nonprofit. They bring global music to Seattle. Incredible. But we have this thriving garden of nonprofits in every corner and more popping up. And what I've learned is there's room in the garden for more. And that those nonprofits pop up. Some people might say, well, how many is too many? I mean, really, is there room? There really is. There are so many more problems to solve, and I'm inviting you, everyone in this room, start a nonprofit. Make yourself a job. Apply for a grant. Fund your own job. You deserve that job, and you deserve recognition for the community work that you are already doing, and a nonprofit would be a great way to do this, and it's working in Seattle, and it can work other places, and it's a strategy to decentralize and to get people paid and to work in collaboration with local governments to get artists paid, but also to get them the recognition they deserve.
Can you talk? That's fantastic.
Yeah, all of it.
Can you also talk, if you can, about the tour grant, the tour support? How did that come about?
Yeah, we were having conversations with local. Yeah, Ben. Oh, Ben's going to do a session. We can pause.
So I think the nonprofit thing is really interesting because we are in a phase right now with our federal government, and do not get me started, however, I do not see in any time in the foreseeable future that music is going to rise to the top of anything in our government. You know, this is chaos. It's dividing people. It's kind of helping to foster distrust. So we do need to have some hybrid of, you know, local government support, nonprofits, and private support. Bring these together. Can you talk a little bit about this? Because you've been working and doing so much of this, and I think it's just so fascinating to hear how you've brought all the different parties together for solutions.
Yeah. Definitely thinking about these three different corners, right? Philanthropy, the public sector, as well as nonprofit. There's a lot of different moving parts here, obviously. When we look at our work with Youth on Record, we have what comes in as government grants, support, as mentioned, like our mental health and wellness portfolio that we are expanding. We have recently hired a mental health and wellness manager who is integrating wellness into every aspect of our program. This can be clinical, this can also be traditional, community wellness, different types of non-clinical supports. Then we also are in the schools, so we actually get contracts with the schools. Many schools, as we know, have lost art and music over a decade ago. They want music in the schools. We offer music production classes, instrumental music classes, as well as a ethnic studies class called Identity, Power, and Music that uses music as a tool to explore all these different elements. And then when we think about philanthropy and the different areas there, we do not get a ton of support from organizations that are focused specifically on the arts, but we have been able to garnish relationships and nurture relationships with funders that are really coming in and see this mission, the value, and the power of what music can do in this youth development lens. Big shout out to Jamie Duffy, our ED here at Youth on Record, who's spent over 15 years navigating these three different realms of funding and resources, really with the vision of youth development, opportunity, and really nurturing and building the ecosystem.
And how long have you been at it? How long has this been going on? I mean, this organization, how long did it take you to pull all these pieces together?
That's a Jamie question. I think Jamie's actually going to be speaking later on today, and we'll probably dive into that. I've been with the org for 2 years. I know we've been active for over 15 years. One other piece that's really interesting is we have our space is called the Youth Media Studio. We are in a Denver Housing Authority complex, which is just southwest of downtown Denver, literally on the light rail line, 2 stops from Ball Arena. That's a whole other conversation too that we can dive into. There's a lot of moving parts, but what's exciting about our space in Denver Housing Authority is what happened around 10 years ago is that there's these old housing projects from the 50s that were essentially, old and not really livable anymore. They scraped them. Over 80% of the tenants that lived in this housing development were able to stay in these more modern, kind of 5-story condo-looking units. But what we were able to navigate was building this our youth media studio on the first floor. We're essentially the anchor tenant of one of the big unit developments. And so in this area, they brought in nonprofits that are really focused on wellness and focused on youth development and health and all that. And so we have a long-standing relationship with Denver Housing Authority where we pay very little for our space, and we can actually shift that money into opportunities for young people, into teaching artists, into mentorship opportunities. And we have a flagship studio there big enough to bring in a field trip of 50 students, record with the whole entire band, Ableton Studio, Mac Lab, the whole nine. So it's really, really exciting.
It's so impressive. I feel like every one of you has shown such passion, such dedication, you know, the willingness to push the rock up the hill, because that is what this industry is about. And so many people think it's going to be like, oh, it's going to be really great, it's going to be awesome, it's going to be really fun. It's like, it's also going to be really hard work, because none of this is easy. So we're almost at time, but what I would love to hear from each of you is kind of what's next? What are you working on? What are you passionate about? Where do you think that when you think about where you want to put your energy in the next year, tell us that.
Wow, it's hard to feel positive in these times, being honest, but I think that we need to be together and we need to keep educating our communities to protect the institutions and the key pieces of our community that keep music alive. And I think that is going to happen in the next few years. It's hard for me to be like, to bring like super positive advices, but not because, I mean, it's just because I really think that we need to be really smart, that we need to be together, that we need to be in communication, sharing the different challenges that we are facing in the music industry, and let our audiences know how they can support our local communities, local artists, local photographers, local arts, local venues, local radio stations. And I think that it's going to be important right now. I mean, since January the 20th, right now are a lot of communities that are facing a lot of problems right now. There are, just talking about the music industry, there are artists that they feel really afraid about playing music. There are shows that are being canceled because they are afraid about the rights from ICE. There are a lot of things that are happening right now across the country, on each corner. And I think that we need to be together and facing this together. So empathy and humanity, my friends, and stay strong.
Y'all, we need you. This is your invitation to get hope drunk with us. Let's go. We cannot retreat into despair. This is our calling. It has never been more important for you to shout from the rooftops what your community needs, what people who have less power and privilege than you need. Now is the time to identify those problems and to show a lens of hope with that, and to tell our community leaders what we need, because a lot of things are decentralizing and crumbling, and now is the time for us to build something new together. So shout what you want, and even just like center yourself in the question, what does my community need? Give yourself time to focus on what that need looks like. Write down a wish list. Just before this, I was taking notes during the sessions of my wish list for the local music community. And one of the things I wrote was, I want a musician laureate. How cool would that be if there were like a city of Seattle? So I pitched it to Shannon in the bathroom. I was like, Shannon, can we have a Washington State musician laureate? The poets do it. Why can't we have it? And she was like, yeah, let's do it. Write it down. Let's get hope drunk and manifest the best possible future for music, because it depends on us.
Work.
Yeah, definitely echoing that. I think right now is the time of coming together, finding community, building community, maintaining with community. I think when I think about what's next and what's in the immediate future, I think about how do we break these barriers to really connect the dots and support up-and-coming artists from marginalized communities that don't have those networks, those resources, the connections to people with power, or people that have the tools and the keys to open up opportunities to get people paid and to really make a livable wage in these expensive cities, right? I also think about finding and building and supporting, nurturing spaces and containers where people can find their peers, find peace, find health, wellness, right? And I also really think about how do we use the tools and the resources that we have to hack the system and really support building out figuring out how to navigate the algorithm, but also using these tools and resources to go into these communities that need this support and bring in teaching artists and mentors that speak multiple languages and that have cultural competencies and whatnot, and really build with young people that really need, and up and coming artists. And I say young people a lot, but I'm really thinking about young artists, building with them and giving them and supporting and instilling those tools that they're going to need to really navigate this system, and for sure these next 4 years.
For me, I frequently feel like I am literally fiddling while Rome burns. And that sometimes I'm like, is making music enough? Like, am I doing enough? And I have to come back to, in a revolution, like, everybody's not doing the same thing. Everybody has a different role. And it serves no one to get so, like, overwhelmed with despair or like wondering if your role matters. Like, you're getting overwhelmed to a point where you can't actually do what it is that you are best at. I think right now it's super important to like just like go even harder in whatever it is that you are doing, and trust that that is enough to do your part, right? I know for me, I'm like, I believe that like so much of what we're seeing, like the collapse of all of these systems, like the dying breaths of a lot of these things that have been very long lasting and extremely harmful to communities and to the planet and everything, are like manifestations of just like deep pain and like unwellness. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I want people to vibrate their bodies together. I want people to have a feeling of like, what does like that sense of like expansiveness feel like on an embodied level, so that they can take it out into their work and in whatever way that is. But I have become really confident that that is my role. So I'm working on an album right now, and it's like, I know that's what I need to do for this year, is like put this out and like share it in the ways that I can share it, because that is how I contribute to the better world that I want to see. So whatever it is you're doing, like, yeah, if you got your days where you're like, oh my God, like, is this even matter, whatever, feel your feels or whatever. Don't get bogged down in that. What you're doing, your work matters, you matter, and we can't do this without you. We can't see a better future without the work that you're doing. So like squat up with people and like reaffirm the importance of what it is that we're doing.
A huge round of applause for all of these panelists.